Hi everyone, welcome to this session. I'm Jana. I've worked on data and data-based systems for more than 13 years and on the BI and BA part of work for more than 7 years. Today I'm going to talk about data pipelines and in general data architecture for data analysts and business analysts. One of the major problems that everybody asks is why is there so many data and why is there multiple version of data in a particular organization? When you get into a job as a data analyst or a business analyst in an organization, the first thing you'll meet is there is a big data lake with multiple tables and the same data repeating everywhere. But there is an order to this chaos. And today we are going to talk about that particular scenario, which is called the data architecture. In this class, I'm going to cover only the medallion architecture, which is almost an industry standard in today's world. Why do you need to know this? As a data analyst, you need to know where your data come from, where to retrieve your data, how to process your data, how everything works in terms of business logic. To do that, data has to be in the right format. One of the things that costs organizations time and energy is data not being architected in the right way. So everything is done at runtime to pull the right data for the scenario. So there's going to be an order to this session as well, which is we're going to talk about the medallion architecture. And then based on that, we'll see how there can be questions in an interview and how you should tackle this question. What are some of the pitfalls of getting early into the solutioning? And we'll also discuss about how to base your answers to such questions. So let's get started without delay. So medallion architecture. What is a medallion architecture? It has been there for a while. The name is recent, but the medallion architecture has been a standard for a while now. With the forming of data lakes and cloud computing, this has become very important. After the IoT, the influence of data has exploded. So all the companies want to do is collect data. They collect data even though they might not be necessary. So they put all of those data into a data lake. That's where everything lives. A data lake becomes really muddy when you have so much data and you don't know what to fetch from. And that's where the medallion architecture comes into picture. A medallion architecture is nothing but how we take the data that is coming from these sources and then making it in a way that is easy for the consumers to use it. As a data analyst, you'll be mostly working on the final end product, but you should also be knowing why, how, and where this data is. That's what is going to improve your quality of your analysis, your productivity, your answers, and everything. So let's get started on what this medallion architecture means. It's nothing but we are going to talk about metals, simple, bronze, silver, and gold, right? So, and it's also almost how they capture these purities, right? So let's start with what is the initial data sources in a company, any company today. Their income, their source of data is internet or their portal or their order books or their inventory, right? So there are multiple sources where this data comes because you cannot just operate with one section. If you take a medium-sized companies, they might have employee section, they might have sales, they might have marketing, they might have other departments, right? The data are interrelated while they are not the same. The sales team captures these sales in order, right? The inventory teams process these orders. So one data, which is in this case an order ID, is going to be generated from two different systems. How they bring it in is totally different. The sales team generates the order. The inventory team makes sure the order is fulfilled, right? So they are looking at the same data point, but they are using it for two different reasons. There are a ton of differences between how these two data is being collected and how they are being used. So as a first step, let's talk about the data sources. All of these teams within that organization is going to collect this data and they are going to produce. These are producers, right? And each system is designed differently. A marketing system will have like a ERP, or CRM. Whereas an inventory system will have an inventory software, and then a marketing team might have totally a different software, and their outputs are not going to be similar. One is going to generate in form of JSON, one is going to generate in form of tables, one is just going to give you Excel sheets, and all of this information are not generated at the same granularity. So the marketing team is going to do it however where they are running the campaign, maybe weekly, whereas the order team is going to do it every day at the end of the day to just know how many orders are there. But the inventory team is going to do it every hour, so that they keep traps of what is happening in the stock and availability of the goods. So same data or data from all of these sources get generated in various granularity and various chronological, right? So let's talk about what is the first step. Bronze is nothing but however these data are generated or produced, they just get dumped into this layer. Bronze layer is nothing but the raw golden copy of the data. You need this information. You might say that, why do we need to store these things? Why can't we do all the cleaning and then bring it into the database? Because it's a waste of space. It is, but a very important step or very important store for us, because this layer is where the source of truth is, how it came through. We will see at the end how this layer is going to be used in your day-to-day data analysis. People think that they never need a bronze layer for their analysis. All they can do is like final output that they can use, but bronze layer is a very important part. So the bronze layer just stores the data as it comes in. JSONs, as I said, JSON, CSVs, tables, however it is. And once they are there, these are like various data types, various time frames, missing data, and all those problems. Once that is there, we then go into the silver layer. This is the place where we apply all the changes, all the transformations, and all sorts of business logic built into these tables. I would say here is where we clean the data. So from the bronze layer, you could create a logical scheme of the data. You understand how the data sources talk to each other. You will create various tables on how these data sets are going to work together. Right? So the first thing is going to be data model for each of these systems: marketing, inventory, sales. They have a data model. They shall have a data model in silver layer. Why? Because that's how the business logics get added to this data. The first step is cleaning up the data formats, data, missing data, data type, and then you bring them all to whatever the technology you use. In AWS, you could be using RDS, you could be using Redshift, however you want to do it, tabular form, or you want it in a just to keep it in a JSON form. But how you want your final output to be, you'll be cleaning. You will be making sure it is in that same format from all the systems, so that they can talk to each other. You make all those changes, usually known as ETL, extract, transform, and then you get loaded into a table, or however you want to store it, right? It can be flat files, or however you want to process it to the next step. Once you have this, you set and define the entities. You set and define the fact in this layer, right? So for example, in the marketing team, you could have click-through data coming from Facebook, Google, Instagram, or even like emails, campaign, and other things. So marketing team might be using multiple sources, but each of this information need to go into something. That could be a campaign ID, which is like today they are going to do a particular campaign for a particular product. And then every data associated with that product would be in another table, right? So you will have a entity called campaign, and you will have the entity called clickstream, right? So similarly in inventory, you will have like product category, and then the product, in-stock product values. And similarly in sales, you will have product category and the sales numbers or the sales transactions in a separate table. Similarly, there could be multiple entities to each of these things. So you will usually, you can say one or two fact tables and then multiple dimension tables to it. You make sure that they are in the right format. And then you need to know how they connect between each other. The main table could be connecting to a date table. For marketing, it could be like week date. That is where you store all your weeks. Week 1, week 2, week 3 for 2026, week 1, week 2, week 3 for 2027. And then when you aggregate, you can just do from that date table so that you aggregate the whole data, right? So you need to make sure these things are put together in the right format, in the right logic, and also they should match. And that is called cardinality, right? So one table, how it connects to the other table, right? If there is one value here, how many values will be there in the other table that it connects to? Primary key, foreign key, all of those basics. We can have another session on all these basics, but you should be knowing all of these important terminology so that you understand how each data talks to the other data. That is very important. Now you have a ton of information from various sources arranged in a particular order, right? This still is not your final product. Take an example. This company is something like a, how do you call it? Say FedEx, or say something like Walmart. Walmart is going to have like billions of records for each of these sections. And if I have only this table and all my report depend on these tables, I'm going to just burn through my compute to get aggregation or get a particular value from where. The optimization would be very bad and the resources are going to go for waste. That's where we get the gold layer. The gold layer is something that we want to be very careful about creating, because each and everybody is going to use the data differently and they might have it in a different format, need in a different format for their consumption, right? So in a scenario, you will have one particular data point getting into say leadership. They don't care about the details, they care about like what's happening on a weekly basis, how many marketing campaigns are going, how many are the conversions, how many click-throughs came through. That is all they want. The next one is the marketing team themselves. They want to go a little deeper. They want to see how many click-through came through, what time they come through, and which demographic it's coming from, and how much did we spend on those things, and all those details. So that is much more detailed, right? And the leadership might want it once in a month, whereas the marketing team will want it every day to track the progress. So these are two different things. And then for the leadership, you're going to aggregate the monthly data at monthly granularity. And then the same data is going to be stored in a daily table. You're going to be using this information in a different levels. So for the leadership, it's going to be monthly, and for the marketing team, it is going to be a daily one. So you aggregate monthly table separately and the daily table separately. And the entities that they want to see might be totally different. And you might have multiple aggregate tables for the same data. You might have multiple retention for each of this data in a different way. A marketing team might not care about what happened 3 years ago, right? So the technology changes, they don't care about it. They just see, say, 1 year, how the campaigns have gone through, how similar campaigns have gone through. But for a leadership, they want to see the trend over the years. So their retention would be multiple years. So all of these things makes the golden layer. And again, you might not just be vending reports out of these things. There could be a data science team, which needs 30-day aggregate, 60-day aggregate, 90-day aggregate of a particular data. And then they might want to look for trends in the data and other details. So they might not care about how it is being stored. They might just need the KPI to pre-aggregated and stored in big files. And similarly, we might have data analysts who could want to see all information, all the aggregated information, but does not need to run like hours of query, right? So all of these use cases has to be taken into account when you create golden layer. So one particular data table from a silver table can be going into multiple sections in a gold layer. So once you complete this, you move it into the consumption layer, and all of the said people, the people who want to see it like a very high level, the data engineers and data scientists and the marketing campaign creators, they all can come to this layer and they can fetch this data however they want. And that's mostly where the business analysts and maybe the data analysts work. Now, let's get to how data analysts would be using these layers and when and how. Let's take a particular example. I am going to ask you a question on, can you figure out how a particular marketing campaign went through? I see that Facebook is reporting 10,000 clicks on this particular day, whereas we paid for 40,000 clicks based on their billing. Can you check what's happening? And if you are a data analyst, how would you solve this problem? For example, I would go back to see what the customer is talking about. In this case, your stakeholder is talking about. Where is he getting both information? One is saying, I'm paid for 40,000 clicks, whereas my data shows I have only 10,000 clicks. Where is he getting this data? Most probably, he's getting them from two different places, or how he interpreted the data could be different. He goes, he checks the billing from the billing team, and they say, paid Facebook, say $40 for 40,000 clicks. And then we have the clickstream data that says this campaign has 10,000 clicks. Now, next step, I'll be looking into where these two data come from. Most probably golden layer. Yes, I can directly do it. And I would check both the tables and golden layer. Once you check both the layers, you would be then verifying whether what they said is correct. If it is correct, then you figure out where it is different. So now we go into the silver layer. In the silver layer, we have clear tables and the sources coming through. And I would check how the golden layer tables were created from this silver layer table and what are the tables involved and how it is being aggregated. Once I figure that out, if that information is also correct, that a particular table used by the finance team is coming from payments made to the companies, whereas the clicks is coming from the actual clickstream data. After that, I can track it back to bronze layer. Now I know exactly which source created what data. When was the payment made for what? Now I can track to see whether it was for a particular campaign ID or for a different campaign ID. Because as I said, they just paid $40 for 40,000 clicks to Facebook, which means it could be for multiple campaigns happening. Now I can track it down to the campaign ID and how much they paid. I could have done this in the silver layer as well if I had the breakdown at the silver layer. So as we talked about at the first, if the silver layer lacks some information that is needed to solve a problem, the bronze layer is always there. It's the base. You cannot spin up anything new if it's not in the bronze layer. And if you do, then your data is wrong. So that's where we need a bronze layer. And I would be tracking it down by campaign ID at the bronze layer level and figuring out how it changed. If it's still wrong, that's when I go to the upstream tables or upstream teams to ask what has gone wrong, whether the billing was incorrect, dispute the billing, or the clickstream data is wrong. What's wrong in the stream? Where is it missing the clicks? So now I have clearly understood where the problem is. I could trace it back all the way to the source and try to rectify it. So this is how you would be approaching your problem. And if a particular interviewer asks this question, this is how I would explain them on how I would do a root cause analysis on a particular data discrepancy. Right? So the next step is, how do we put this answer together during an interview? If you had questions about what is the discrepancy, where it is available, what are all the tables available in different layers, those are some of the questions you should get clarified. The next step would be to ask the questions, any clarifying questions that you might have to the interviewer. Once you have all the questions, you should always talk through how at each layer or how at each step of the investigation about a particular data discrepancy will go through. Once you have all the data discrepancy, the root cause analysis figured, make a note and then start delivering in a clear way on how you will do it step by step. Once you're done, you can clearly conclude the whole process. So some of the mistakes I've seen people do is they start the answer early, they don't think through. So what happens is, as they speak through, they come up with new ideas, and immediately they start explaining those ideas, how it looks to the interviewer. It looks choppy. Choppy is not good. You cannot just speak your mind. You should tailor the response in a particular way where everybody would be able to understand it. So take your time, put your thoughts together, and talk through it. Second thing, you understand a problem differently than what the interviewer intended to. There is no shame in stopping, asking for clarifications. There is no foul in asking whether you are on the right track, and there is no foul to ask questions before you start answering. So if you need clarification, just ask and make sure you get all the information correct. So once you do that, take time if you need it, not too much, maybe a minute or two, gather your thoughts, put it into a particular pace, and then start answering the question. Once you're done with that, good, you can see if the interviewer is impressed or not. So we have talked about all the details about how medallion architecture works, how a data engineer uses medallion architecture to track and get information, finding root cause, and how they all work. And we also discussed about a case study on how you'll be questioned, maybe in an actual interview. So key takeaways are: know your basics, think through the question, frame your answer, deliver clearly. So this is all about medallion architecture. Until next time, bye, see you.